It was the kind of winter morning where the cold crept into your bones before the sun even had a chance to rise, and for Daniel Harris, it was just another day of trying to keep life from slipping through his fingers. His truck coughed out a tired puff of exhaust as he pulled into the driveway of a worn-down apartment complex, a thermos of coffee sitting in the cup holder, still too hot to drink. The bills stacked on his kitchen table had been like silent judges all week, reminding him of the rent he was late on, the electricity bill with its final notice stamped in red, and the school trip his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, wanted so badly to go on but that he couldn't afford. Being a single dad wasn't the life he had planned, but after his wife passed away 3 years ago, life stopped caring about his plans. He worked whatever jobs came his way, plumbing fixes, carpentry repairs, even painting, anything to keep food on the table and Lily smiling. That morning, his phone buzzed with a number he didn't recognize. "Hi, is this Mr. Harris?" a woman's voice asked, crisp and direct yet warm enough to soften the edges. "Yes, ma'am, this is Daniel." She explained she needed a handyman immediately, last minute, important repairs in an old estate house outside of town. The pay was generous, she said, almost too generous for what sounded like simple work. "Can you be here in an hour?" Daniel hesitated. His old truck wasn't in the mood for long drives, but work was work. "I'll be there," he said, jotting down the address. He didn't know then that the woman on the other end of the line wasn't just a client, she was Alexandra Wright, a billionaire businesswoman whose name alone could open boardroom doors and who was quietly enduring her own private battles. The drive out to the Wright estate was like leaving one world for another. City grit gave way to sprawling countryside, where frost kissed the fields and the air felt heavier with history. The house appeared like something from a painting, 3 stories of stone and brick, with towering windows and a gate that hummed as it opened. Daniel parked in the circular driveway, feeling the same way he did when he walked into a fancy store, out of place, underdressed, and ready to be told he didn't belong. Alexandra met him at the door, her poise unmistakable. She wore a simple cream sweater and dark jeans, but there was something in her posture, in the way she looked at him directly, that made her presence impossible to ignore. "You must be Mr. Harris," she said with a small smile. "Daniel's fine," he replied, adjusting the strap of his toolbox. She led him inside, explaining a few urgent repairs, a leaking faucet in the library, a stubborn window in the study, and a broken step on the back porch. He nodded, grateful for the work, careful not to let his eyes linger too long on the expensive paintings and the grand piano that probably cost more than his entire apartment building. As Daniel worked, Alexandra found herself lingering nearby more than necessary. She told herself she was just checking on progress, but in truth, she was curious. There was something in the way he moved, focused, patient, deliberate, that caught her attention. His hands were rough but careful, his tone polite but warm, and when his phone buzzed and she overheard a soft, "Hey, kiddo," followed by a laugh, she saw a side of him that wasn't about the work at all. "That's your daughter?" she asked when he hung up. Daniel smiled, a little embarrassed. "Yeah, Lily. She's 8 going on 20. Smart as a whip, stubborn like her mom." There was a flicker in his eyes then, a shadow of loss, but he quickly masked it with a joke about how she kept beating him at chess. Alexandra had met countless men in her life, charming CEOs, ambitious politicians, silver-tongued investors, but this was different. Daniel's words didn't feel rehearsed. He wasn't trying to impress her. He didn't even seem aware of how rare that was. By the time the winter light had started to fade, Daniel had finished the last repair. Alexandra offered him tea by the fireplace, and though he was ready to get back to Lily, the warmth and the subtle smell of cinnamon convinced him to stay a few minutes. They talked, about Lily's dream of becoming a vet, about the small-town diner Daniel swore had the best pie in the state, about how Alexandra had inherited the estate but rarely had time to enjoy it. "Work keeps me occupied," she admitted, her gaze fixed on the fire. He didn't know the extent of it then, that she ran a global company, that her schedule was a battlefield of meetings and flights, or that she was tired in a way money couldn't fix. For the first time in years, she found herself laughing, real laughter, not the polite kind she used at galas, when Daniel told the story of the time he accidentally glued his toolbox shut during a plumbing job. When he finally left, Alexandra watched his truck disappear into the trees, surprised at the unfamiliar ache in her chest. Over the next week, she found excuses to call him back: a loose cabinet door, a squeaky hinge. Each time, he came, always polite, always with a story about Lily or some mishap from another job. He never lingered unless invited, never pushed, and always refused extra payment. "I'm just glad for the work," he'd say, and he meant it. But one snowy afternoon, as Daniel was fixing the porch light, Alexandra overheard him on the phone again. His voice was low, and there was a weariness to it she hadn't heard before. "I know, buddy. I'll talk to them, but we might have to wait on the trip. I'm sorry." She caught only fragments: Lily's disappointment, a missed school payment, and something inside her shifted. That night, Alexandra sat in her study, staring at the flames in the fireplace, remembering the way Daniel's eyes softened whenever he talked about his daughter. She knew struggle. Her own life had been marked by losses and betrayals despite her wealth, but his was different. His fight was daily, constant, and unseen. 2 weeks later, Daniel arrived at the estate to find Alexandra in the kitchen, flour dusting her hair. "Baking?" he teased. "Don't sound so surprised," she shot back, handing him a steaming cup of coffee. They spent the afternoon fixing a stubborn door and sharing stories, and when Daniel mentioned offhandedly that Lily had a school recital coming up, Alexandra made a mental note. The next evening, she slipped quietly into the small school auditorium, sitting in the back so as not to distract. She watched Lily, tiny and determined, play her violin with all the focus of someone twice her age. And she watched Daniel, sitting in the front row, clapping like his life depended on it. She left without speaking to him, but something in her heart was already decided. A few days later, Daniel received a call from the school. An anonymous donor had covered Lily's school trip, her music lessons for the year, and a scholarship fund for the future. He was stunned, unsure how to process it. That same afternoon, Alexandra called about another urgent repair. When he arrived, she was on the back porch, watching the snow fall. "You didn't have to," he began, but she interrupted. "Some people helped me once, when I didn't deserve it. I'm just paying it forward." He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, saw past the elegance to the kindness underneath. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "You already have," she replied softly. Spring came, and with it, a quiet shift. Alexandra no longer needed excuses to see Daniel. They simply began spending time together, dinners at the diner, walks through the estate gardens with Lily, who quickly decided Alexandra was cool for a grown-up. The bond that grew between them wasn't fast or flashy. It was built in shared moments, in laughter and honesty, in the unspoken understanding of two people who had both been lonely in their own ways. By summer, Alexandra knew what her heart had already decided back in that first repair visit. She had fallen for the man who didn't care about her wealth, who showed up when he said he would, who made her laugh until her ribs hurt. And one evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Daniel realized it too. "I never saw this coming," he said, his voice low. "Me neither," Alexandra admitted, smiling in a way that made him feel like the richest man in the world. In the end, it wasn't the repairs that fixed what was broken, it was the quiet compassion, the shared cups of coffee, the belief in someone else's worth. Daniel no longer worried about being enough for someone like her, and Alexandra no longer felt the need to hide behind her wealth. They had found something rarer than money or status, a love born not from need, but from choice. And for Lily, it meant a home filled with more laughter than she could have imagined. Sometimes, the most extraordinary changes come from the smallest, most ordinary beginnings: a last-minute call, a leaking faucet, a stranger at the door. And sometimes, those beginnings lead you exactly where you were meant to be all along.